Hey guys, welcome to Mikey's Video Game Madness. Thanks for tuning in once again. Today we'll be covering some of our favorite games, and I know it's really cliche to do that, and I've probably done a video like this before, but this has sort of a unique twist to it. So anyway, I want you guys to go through the alphabet A through Z of one of your favorite games for each letter of the alphabet. And it doesn't have to be your all-time favorite game. It's not like a end all be all you're gonna get judged or whatever. Some of the letters are hard too, so if you have to throw like a random game in there just to fit the letter, do so. And if you want to add a little feedback behind why you chose that game, that's cool too. And I know sometimes it's hard, like you might like more than one game in the same series. Like if you like Tekken 1, 3, and 6 and you have to pick just one, just say that you like Tekken. Just name the series. So either a game or series for each letter of the alphabet, and at the end you can do 10 honorable mentions. So I'm going to start off my list, and I'm going to take a pen because I'm going to probably royally screw it up if I don't kind of scratch this stuff off. So it doesn't have to be your all-time favorite, because I know sometimes it's hard just to think of games. It was hard for me to make this list, and there's probably games I'm forgetting or whatever, but I wanted to try anyway because, you know, I needed a video. I needed something for you guys to watch, and I figured it'd be a different change. So here I go. For A, I have the Ace Combat series, which was a nice arcade flight sim series that I really enjoyed. And it was kind of in the middle, and it was really fun. And I always like flight sim games, even the simulators that aren't really games. And it just mixed the arcade and the simulation aspect and kind of made it perfect. Especially, I think, when Ace Combat 2, the first one was called Air Combat on the original PlayStation. I think that's when I really fell in love with the series, and ever since then, I think the only one I haven't played is whatever the first one on the Xbox 360 was. And now that I have an Xbox 360, I'd like to eventually cover it. So yeah. So for A, Ace Combat. B is Batman, the Arkham series, and that's basically because it is basically if the animated series, which I grew up on. Like if anything was going on, it was getting close to 4 o'clock when I was a kid, around the summer of 92, 93 even. Like it was getting close to 4 o'clock, I would haul ass home like my life depended on it to catch this show. So when the Arkham series came out, it was kind of like a Metroid or a later Castlevania game where areas are unlocked when you get more equipment and stuff like that. And it had most of the cast from the animated series, and it was like a more mature version. It was like the cartoon grew up with me and they made a game of it, and it felt true to the character. And it's one of the first superhero games that I feel like you didn't have to be into superheroes. You didn't have to read the comic. Like I had a friend who doesn't read comics at all, who doesn't really like comics all that much. Maybe he read them as a kid or whatever, but I remember him not being in the Batman at all and just absolutely loving the shit out of the game. And I can't say enough good things about this series. Alright, number C, if you watch my channel enough, letter C, if you watch my channel enough, you're probably going to know that it's obviously Castlevania, and I just like it for not so much the last two games, because that was made by basically a new team. They wanted to try something new to make money, but the Japanese Castlevania games always had the best music. I love the gothic atmosphere. For whatever reason, as shallow as a storyline is, it always interested me. I love how it has like this long like timeline, and I love how it goes through all different sorts of folklore and everything to create its enemies, and I just love the characters. And I don't know, there's just something about Castlevania that's always been special to me. Alright, going down the list, we're going to go with Doom. Doom was one of the first, to me, standout first-person shooters. I mean, I played Wolfenstein 3D or whatever. Yeah, it was cool, but Doom really captured me. Like, I remember I rented, and this was the shittier version. I was blown away when I played it on PC. The first time I ever played Doom was on the 32X, and I remember being blown away. And when I played it, it was controversial because of the violence, but honestly, the violence really wasn't a big deal. Now, I think that the 32X version might have been censored a little bit. I can't remember. I haven't played the 32X version in a long time, but growing up in a family where my mom was kind of devout Catholic, I think the most offensive thing in Doom is some of the satanic imagery in there, but I don't really remember it being in the 32X version. I could be completely wrong, but I just remember playing a first-person shooter and that perspective and having it run really smooth, and just the graphics, the creepy atmosphere, and the music. It blended so well. For E, I'm going to go with Earthbound, which is a little known RPG that came out on the Super Nintendo. Overseas, it's known as Mother. We only got Earthbound, which was actually Mother 2. There's 3 Mother games. The first one actually came out on the Nintendo, or the Famicom in Japan, and then they were actually going to release it here in the States as Earthbound. They actually have a ROM called Earthbound Zero, but they didn't release it because it was close to the Super Nintendo and they were scared they were going to lose money, so they never released the US ROM of Mother. So when they released Mother 2, they just called it Earthbound. So when they came out with the ROM for the NES, they called it Earthbound Zero. And there's actually a third Mother game on the Game Boy Advance that has yet to come here in any form. That was on the Game Boy Advance, Mother 3. I played a little bit of it. I did a video of it. It seems pretty cool. And then what makes this RPG special is it's one of the few RPGs I've ever played that takes place in suburbia, which is so unique, and it has like this weird, quirky sense of humor, and I just can't recommend it enough. F, obviously, if you watch my channel, Final Fantasy. Each Final Fantasy is different and special and unique for its individual reasons. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the earlier Final Fantasies, like maybe 1 through 3 as much, because you had to grind a lot more. I wasn't a fan of the massive multiplayer 11. I only played 14 for a bit, which was also a massive multiplayer game, but I really enjoy this series. I always enjoy the characters, the stories, the design, and I like how it goes back to a medieval theme or a futuristic theme, and I like how some things in the game are like still similar, like you always have potions, and you know, you have your little like crystals and stuff like that. I don't know, like each game is like its own game, but you can tell that it's in the same series, and I just really like it. The 3D Grand Theft Autos, I say 3D because the first 2 Grand Theft Autos were overhead and they just didn't do it for me. But when I play Grand Theft Auto 3, it's one of the first times, I say the first time Shenmue, but we'll get later on the list, spoiler alert, where I just wanted to walk around the city. It's one of the first times I could just drive around and do whatever I wanted to, and I haven't been a huge traveler, and I just always been fascinated just with the thought of traveling in a video game in a city that feels breathing and lifelike, and not, well, lifelike at the time, but it's quite pixelated. But yeah, that was just an amazing experience, and I still look forward to the Grand Theft Auto releases today. H is Half-Life, and Half-Life is special. It doesn't do anything incredible like shooter wise. It's just great at storytelling. The character you play as never talks. You never play as you never like see a cutscene or whatever. Everything's from your point of view. It has incredible physics. I like the character design. The story's off the wall and weird, and I don't know, you're always, especially Half-Life 2, you're always running away, and the pacing in it is just perfect. The AI is actually, especially, it might be stupid now, but I remember being flanked and stuff like that in a first-person shooter, and that never happened before. And just the design and sound, the sound work in Half-Life is especially really good, and it just stands out, and I can't recommend the Half-Life series enough. Alright, I kind of winged it on the next two, but I really do like the game. If I say it wrong, I apologize. I want to say Ico, it might be Eco, but basically it's the game with that kid that has his horns and he's locked up in the in that huge castle, and you gotta use like another prisoner, which is this girl. I keep on wanting to think her name's Yuna. I know, like, I'm picking like great games out and I can't remember the characters' names. I can't remember what her name is. But you had to not only take care of yourself but like another person, and I just found it endearing, and the castle is just really huge and almost its own character, and the game's just interesting, and the scenery is just incredible to explore, and I just think it's a really cool puzzle game, and I don't think I have played anything like it to date since it first came out. And I played the HD remakes on the PlayStation. I say remakes because it also came out with Shadow of the Colossus, which is another great game. But it holds up quite well even to this day, even if the textures weren't super high resolution, because whatever they do with the textures, they made it almost look bump map. I don't know, like, it's just a great game, and I recommend it, and you definitely should check it out. J is Jack and Dexter, because I couldn't think of a game that starts with a J. By the time I'm done this video, I'll probably think of something. But yeah, it's just a great platformer series made by Naughty Dog. K is Kirby's Adventure. Essentially, it's just one of the best platformers on the original Nintendo. It's just super accessible. It was the first Kirby game where you actually could be creative and use your powers for different things. You would suck up the enemies, you would push down, and you would absorb their powers. It's the first game in the Kirby series where you could do that. It was actually the second game to come out, even though it's not called like Kirby's Dream Land 2. The first Kirby came out on the original Game Boy. So yeah, one of my favorite platformers on the NES. Next game is L.A. Noire, and if I had to pick one single game that I would say that I truly felt that it was a step in the next generation, where I got this feeling that I was playing something new, would be L.A. Noire during the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 genre. And that's game is like the closest I've ever felt the time travel. Like, you went into a different era that was painstakingly recreated, from like the clothes to the items to the shoes. Not only could you play like the game, you could explore and look around, and that alone would make the game interesting, at least to me. I know a lot of people complain that it was boring, but it's one of my all-time favorite games. It has one of the best soundtracks in a video game I've ever heard, and I just can't say enough good things about it. I started to do a let's play video. Not even a let's play, it was starting to become a walkthrough. I never finished it. So if you want to learn more about L.A. Noire and hear me gush more about it, since I still got to go through this decently lengthy list, definitely check that out. Next on the list is Mass Effect. Again, like another game that I hold really high up there, almost a tie with LA Noire, and like something that defined the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 generation. Just the choices that you had to make and the consequences behind those choices, and you got to be a freaking captain of like a spaceship like the Star Trek Enterprise, but it was dark and gritty, like something you wouldn't be allowed to see in like Star Trek or Star Wars. So it was just badass, and just being able to take your character through each game and see them progress on an emotional and personality level, and how everybody looks upon you and your choices that you made, whether you helped people live in the game or they died because of your stupid or smart decisions, or you made the right decisions or the wrong decisions, just the consequences and the weight behind that, like through 3 whole games, and each one remembered every single thing you did. Like, to play those games in consecutive order is one of the most amazing gaming experiences I've ever had, and I can't recommend that series enough. And I just chose Ninja Gaiden. Don't be confused with the 3D ones. I just think that they're excellent platformers on the NES. I'm speaking of the NES 2D Ninja Gaiden games. I just really like them. They remind me a lot of Castlevania, if you didn't play as a vampire hunter but a ninja, and the characters are kind of weird. And I love the cutscenes of Ninja Gaiden. That's one of the things that stood out for me, is the music and the cutscenes in between the excellent platforming levels. Now, this game is hard as balls. It's harder than Castlevania. Balls are kind of soft, aren't they? I don't know. Don't answer. But yeah, it's just awesome. O was kind of hard. I picked Okami. That's a really good game. It's kind of like The Legend of Zelda, but you play like as like a wolf-like character, and it has like this cool artistic air, and like this artistic what would you call it, like watercolor like look, where everything looks like it's made with brush strokes and it's painted on rice paper, and you actually have to use the analog stick or the Wii remote, depending on what you're playing with, to actually draw like shapes and stuff that actually turn into objects in the game. It's just really cool. Persona. I love the Persona series. I mean, I could have cheated and waited to S, but I wanted to add something different for S, because it's actually the Shin Megami Tensei Persona series, but we're just going to stick with Persona. The fighting games are called Persona, but the whole series Persona, I just love the art style, the character design, the modern day theme of it all, like the references to the cult. It's just really bizarre, and the music's real catchy. There's a certain style to it. I like the colors and how vibrant they are, and just everything. It just oozes personality, and every time I see a Persona release, I was actually late in adopting like the Persona series. The first Persona game I played was 4. Now I slowly caught up. Like, I believe I've played every American release of Persona except maybe the PSP game. So now that I have an idea, the first Persona is kind of weaker than the other ones, but I think by the time the second Persona came out, which is actually split into 2 different games, if you want to play both of them, there's one on the PlayStation 1 you have to get, that's Persona 2. I don't know what the subtitles are, and there's one on the PSP, but definitely if you're into Persona, I would definitely start at Persona 4. That's the most accessible, and I can't wait till Persona Q comes out on the Nintendo DS, I believe in November. But excellent RPG series. It just reeks of like personality and style, and it, even though it's kind of cheesy and it has a like a cliche anime look, you just sounds really corny. You kind of feel hip when you play it a little bit, but then there's these references to the cult and the soundtrack and developing relationships and just it taking place in modern times. It usually takes place in a Japanese like school setting, which it kind of has like a high school dating simulator. You just have to play it. Definitely play Persona 4 if you want to really try it, and if you want to play the best version, play Persona 4 Golden on the Sony Vita. So next on the list is Quake. I just picked that because that's just one of the few games I knew that start with a Q that I would actually play. I actually picked up Quake 4 not too long ago. It actually came with a free copy of Quake 2, which I played the most of, and it's the Quake series is kind of like the next step up from Doom. It's the first person shooter when they started to use polygons, and it's probably the first polygon based first person shooter that I know of, at least, that actually played very well to the point where people could play competitively. Resident Evil, the older ones I'm referencing, I know everybody is kind of on the fence about the newer ones, but the older ones, I remember the first time I played Resident Evil on the PlayStation, those dogs jumping out of the window. That's the first time I think I've ever played a game that actually tried to scare me, and that was cool. And I was in love with the series after that. Sometimes it gets a little sci-fi with some of its characters and our creatures or whatever, and the acting's really bad, but it was the closest thing to a zombie game that I could play at the time. Like, that'd be like something that would resemble like something George Romero would have made. It's kind of funny to think of now, because now they probably have better zombie games and stuff like that out there, but Resident Evil is always special to me. I used to love to keep up with the storyline, but now it's kind of convoluted and kind of turned into an action game. And hopefully they'll eventually go back to their roots. I know Capcom's having financial problems now, so maybe they'll wise up and make the game everybody's been asking for. But I will say, Resident Evil Revelations kind of went back to the survival horror roots a bit, not all the way. Maybe close to where Part 4 was. But anyway, moving on. Snatcher for the Sega CD, made by I'm gonna say his name wrong, I'm sure, Hideo Kojima, the creator of Metal Gear. Snatcher was kind of like a menu-based version of LA Noire, and it was like a mixture of Invasions of the Body Snatchers, a little bit of Terminator, because instead of like extraterrestrials, they were like robots that look a lot like the Terminator, like robots that took over the bodies and emulated like the person. And it was like a detective noir story, and it had a lot of elements of Blade Runner, like the outfits looked a lot like Blade Runner, especially like one of the bounty hunters actually looks like gosh, I can't think of his name, like one of the replicants in Blade Runner or whatever. And Gillian Seed, the main character you play as, actually kind of looks a little bit like Deckard Harrison Ford and the game. And it just has this one of the best soundtracks and best voice acting I think I've ever heard on the Sega CD. And Hideo Kojima actually said if he would love to see somebody make a sequel of the game, or maybe even a remake, and he said he would like to see it be made like LA Noire. And that made perfect sense, because I kind of felt like LA Noire was like if Snatcher went to the next level, if Snatcher would have evolved into its own game, because obviously you can do the things in LA Noire on the Sega CD. So but Snatcher involved a lot of the same kind of investigation techniques and stuff like that, where you had to investigate objects and interrogate people and stuff like that. And I hope one day we get another Snatcher game. I think that it'll probably never happen, but if it did, how incredible would that be? So the next on the list is Tomb Raider, the new one. I'm not a terribly huge fan of the other ones, except maybe the two before were okay. Before the last one that just came out. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. I'm not even playing a game and I'm rambling. Isn't that bad? But yeah, just the latest Tomb Raider that came out. This is 2014, just in case by the time you listen to this, another Tomb Raider game's out. But yeah, it just captured a nice mixture. Essentially, it emulated Uncharted, but Uncharted really emulated Tomb Raider, so they kind of go hand in hand. But it just had perfect set pieces and action and stuff like that. They didn't overly sexualize Lara Croft. She gets the shit beaten out of, which I hate to say that I love, but I just love the fact that you see the character get fucked up as the game progresses. Batman Arkham City, or Batman in the Arkham series, also gets really torn up and messed up and scratched up, and I just like that design. Like, as you progress, it really makes you feel like you're on this hardcore adventure, and just everything was so refined and well done. It was just perfect, and it was one of the few times I could say Tomb Raider was my favorite game, because I was always on the fence of it. I could see why people like Tomb Raider, although I felt like some of the puzzles and shit were illogical, or something was too time consuming, or I thought the control was off. I couldn't bitch about a thing about this Tomb Raider. Everything was just amazing, and I can't wait till they release more Tomb Raider games, as long as they make them modeled around that particular Tomb Raider. So yeah, Tomb Raider's for T. Then we have Uncharted, kind of the same, for the same reasons that I picked Tomb Raider. We have Beautiful Joe, which just was an excellent platformer. I mean, I had V, so I couldn't think of a lot of things. I'm sure I'll think of a million things once I'm done. But Beautiful Joe, just because it was an excellent platformer. I like the comic book style, and it was just really fun. And it's a shame that we don't see more of that character. I think the last time we saw Beautiful Joe, he was in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which might be the last time we ever see him. For W, I picked Wolfenstein, but specifically I picked Wolfenstein The New Order just because it was just one of the few first-person shooters as of recently that I've played that I've really enjoyed and really dedicated itself to the single-player experience, so much that there is no multiplayer in the game, and it just had an interesting story. It was fun. It had all the perks of a new shooter, like looking down the sights and stuff like that, so it wasn't like dumbed down where you're just like shooting and you don't have to worry about reloading and stuff. You still had to reload the gun. You didn't have regenerating health, and it just had the perfect balance, perfect control. And from what I saw, even though it didn't look as good, it looked like it was really balanced on every console that it came out on. It was just the perfect feeling first person shooter that I had been looking for quite some time. It wasn't like Call of Duty. It had sci-fi elements. It had an interesting concept of what if the Nazis won. It was just excellent, and I just like the series all around. I'm not ever since Return to Castle Wolfenstein, but yeah, if I had to pick one, Wolfenstein: The New Order. There's a ton of Xenogear games. There's Xenosaga. There's Xenoblade. I hope I'm saying that right, but my favorite is always going to be the original Xenogears on the PlayStation, which actually had robots, and actually provoked a lot of questions and religious themes and stuff like that. And it was just an all-around excellent RPG, and it was also fairly lengthy. And that'll just always be one of my favorite RPGs. Yoshi's Island, it's just a nice Nintendo platformer. What more can I say? Zelda, a nice puzzle game. There's really not a lot of story in it. Just the puzzles are really always fun to solve, and it's just very accessible, and it sucks you in, and you already know about Zelda. So what more can I say? All right, honorable mentions. I'm going to go by some of these fast. The Super Mario series. If you don't know who Mario is, you probably don't watch my channel, so I'm going to go on to number 2. Chrono Trigger, one of the best RPGs I've ever played. It involves time travel, and I believe there's like 15 different possible endings due to choices and decisions you make during the course of your trips through time, and it's just one of the most fun and accessible RPGs I ever played. It's the game that got me into RPGs, and really I can't thank that the people who made that game enough for that, because it opened up a whole world. It made me more patient towards RPGs, because once I saw what RPGs were capable of, then like I was down. Like I was like, bring it, whatever RPGs. If this is what RPGs have to offer, I'm willing to grind the character and spend the extra time to level the character up and progress further. It just opened up a whole new world to me, and I just love time travel stories. Can't say good enough things about it. Next on the list is Metal Gear. Metal Gear is just one of the best stealth games. I like the character. Hideo Kojima, who made one of the games on the list, which was Snatcher, also made Metal Gear. The first Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2, the 8-bit ones, weren't all that great to me. But when Metal Gear Solid and Beyond came out, like, they blew me away. I couldn't stop playing them until they were done. Those are some of the few games that once I start playing, I will eat, sleep. Sorry, I had to yawn. I will eat, sleep, drink, and play, breathe Metal Gear. I even skipped school a couple of times so I could finish the game. I know that's nothing to brag about, but that's how good it is. Battlefield, again, if you watch my channel, you already know what Battlefield is. Also wrote down Call of Duty. Like it or not, they define some of the first-person multiplayer and campaign games. They basically perfected like the console like control and feeling of what a first person shooter could play like and feel like on a console. Like, I think most first person shooters that come out nowadays, like especially on console, borrow like ideas that were originated from especially Call of Duty. The reason why Battlefield's on there is just because Battlefield, I think, has the better multiplayer where you actually feel like you're in a battle, and just the environmental destruction of Battlefield tops it off. So, like, I don't even remember what number it is, because I actually wrote down numbers and wrote down the list beside it. So, the numbers in the list of the games aren't actually parallel from one another, so it's super sloppy. But Battlefield and Call of Duty count as two separate things. Shenmue was one of the first sandbox open world games I had ever experienced, and it was just such a great experience. Not only did it take place in a different country, it took place during I believe 1985, and you'd lived the life of like this Asian teenager, and he's trying to find out why his dad was murdered, and you just go through the city and experience everything. And before Grand Theft Auto 3, there was Shenmue, and I believe Shenmue, if there wasn't Shenmue, I'm not sure if Grand Theft Auto would be the same. I can't help but to feel like Shenmue had something to do with the structure of the Grand Theft Auto series in the open world. I just think it's one of the first games like that, and it's the first time I fully felt detached and engrossed in a world that didn't really exist, and that was so awesome. I have to give props to Sonic, just like Mario. If you don't know who Sonic is, then you're probably not watching a video game channel, so I don't have to explain. The Last of Us, just a great story, great game. It's somewhat new. I don't want to go too much into the story because the remastered version actually comes out as of this recording tomorrow. So I don't want to speak too much about it, but it's not technically a zombie game, but it had great stealth mechanics and mechanics that you would expect from a zombie type game, and then the characters and the story and the bond between the characters and their emotions and everything, it was just perfect. The writing was excellent, and some of the best writing and character development I have ever experienced in the game. And the same could be said for Telltale's Walking Dead series, which is an adventure type game, so it's not the same kind of stealth game, but it still has that character design. A lot actually darker than The Last of Us, which is a pretty dark game on its own, but I mean, the Walking Dead Telltale series has been going on for 2 seasons now. They just announced a 3rd season as of this recording, and I just can't wait. I'm always anxious for the next episode to come out. It leaves you hanging. You feel like shit if a character dies and it's your fault, and just the fucked up shit that you see. It's a cinematic experience, definitely not for kids. It looks like a kid's game because it has like this awesome comic book style, very vibrant, very sharp. I really like the art style in the game, and I just can't say enough good things about it. You should just experience it on your own, and everybody's experience is usually a little bit different unless you make the same exact choices, but it's a little bit hard because there's even subtle things that you do that'll make the characters look at you differently. So yeah, I definitely recommend that as an honorable mention. And my last honorable mention is the Max Payne series. It just is the first real comic book noir, like, I don't know, like shooter game, third person shooter that had the first game that I know of that had like the slow motion bullet time and stuff like that. Just the narration from the main character and the dark, somewhat cheesy comic book storyline, but it's gritty at the same time. I just love the universe, and when I play the Max Payne games, like a lot of the games on this list, I can't just stop playing. I have to play it from beginning to end. I can't stop until I finish, and that's really something huge for me to say about a game, because usually I'll play a game, start playing something else, because a lot of times I'll play a game, even if I like the game, I'll play it and I'll start thinking about something else, and it's like, why am I playing this when I'm wanting to play this other game? But when there's a really good game like Max Payne or whatever, I just can't, I don't know, like, it's just a good game. It's all you want to play, and it's a game that I can play over and over again. I actually have the first one on my cell phone, which actually feels like a perfect port of the PC, which is really sad because my PlayStation 2 version was like so watered down and like downgraded from the PC to be ported over to the PlayStation 2. It's crazy that my cell phone, which is actually outdated as is, I'm actually due for an upgrade, can actually handle a PC perfect port of Max Payne. And Max Payne 3 is also excellent. If you haven't played it, you probably could get it dirt cheap now, and you should have played it already, but anyway, definitely should play it. If I haven't covered it, like, I'll definitely cover it again. I know I covered it with like this little shitty video recorder, but I can't remember if I erased it or not. I'll definitely have to go back. I definitely should cover a series that I hold in such high regard. But anyway, that's my list. So basically, if you would, because I know you're kind people and I just want to interact back. I know this was kind of rambly and all over the place, but you're used to that by now. If you're new to this channel, I do this shit all the time. I ramble, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, it's crazy, you'll love it. But anyway, yeah, so if you guys would kindly, if you want to make a video too, that would be actually super cool. But if you even want to make a list, I would actually prefer a video because they're more interactive and fancy. I don't know how many of you are even going to watch this, but for those of you who do, I prefer a video. But if you want to leave a comment from A to Z, please, for each letter, give me one of your favorite games or game series. So for every single letter in the alphabet, give me a game or a game series that you really like or is one of your favorites. And then, just to be fair, if you can't decide, if you want, this part's optional. Well, this whole thing's optional. But if you don't feel like you got to list all the games that you wanted to, pick up the 10 honorable mentions. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, feel free to click like. Feel free to leave comments. I'm actually looking forward to your comments because I asked you to list your favorite games from A to Z. If you have negative comments, you know what? For this video, forget them. But if you feel the need to leave a negative comment, please make sure it's constructive and not asshole like. That would be greatly appreciated. And if you're new to this channel and you enjoyed this video for whatever sick twisted reason, feel free to subscribe. And if this video didn't tickle your fancy, because this is kind of different from my usual videos, feel free to check out my other videos. There's probably around 470 and change as of this recording, so there's bound to be one you like, unless you're like super picky or something. Then fuck off, I don't want to know you. No, seriously, just check out the other videos. I love you, you're awesome, and I don't even know you, we just have that bond. But anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you on the next video. I look forward to either your comments or your video responses. I can't wait to hear back from you guys. Take care, bye.